I'm ready.
A minute or so.
Dan, I'm ready.
We got another minute. Okay, today is Wednesday, June 19th, 2019. I'm calling the regular session of Oregon City Commission to order. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle-Smith. Here. Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Present.
And Mayor Dan Holliday.
Here. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, ceremonies, proclamations, and presentations. Under 3A, we have the 19-386 Oregon Impact presenting award to Abby's Legendary Pizza of Oregon City.
Thank you. My name is Janelle Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director of Oregon Impact. And Oregon Impact ensures that our littlest Oregonians are riding safely in their car seats, that teens understand the consequences of impaired and distracted driving, and the adults in their lives are given the tools to guide them. So we were one of the recipients of the tax funds that came from cannabis sales. And our goal was to get information about safe storage out to our businesses. So I wanted to share with you 55 of Oregon City's businesses took our materials in and shared it with their employees, and I'm passing that around. And basically it was all about safe storage. We also had 76 of your businesses that had folks come in, or their employees accept a locking box from us to lock up cannabis and edibles in their homes so that our kids didn't have access to them. So we were very encouraged by that. I want to tell you, Abby's Pizza did an awesome job. Not only did they share the information with their employees, but also with their customers coming in. They are way too busy to come here and get an award, but I wanted you all to know how awesome they are and how great they were in helping out the community. So we're just wrapping up our project, and that's why we wanted to share that information with you today. But we're really thankful for all the businesses and the residents that helped us get the message out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we have the Willamette Falls Legacy Project programming, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to invite up Alex Gilbertson from Metro and Andrew Mason from the Willamette Falls Trust. Alex is going to speak a little bit about the context of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project and the programming, how that relates in. Andrew is going to speak a little bit about the trust role in the programming conversation. As you're aware, we're in the process of developing the Willamette Falls Legacy Project site, and at this point, we're going to be moving forward with a programming plan. This is kind of a kickoff, and we're anticipating coming back in the fall. Alex.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday and Commissioners. My name is Alex Gilbertson. I'm a senior planner with Metro, who's managing the design and construction for the Willamette Falls Riverwalk. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the past, but I do think it's important to have a gentle reminder of where we are and where we came from. As you recall, back upon bankruptcy, Oregon City, Metro, Clackamas County, and the state all came together to form a partnership to establish a vision and build a world-class Riverwalk. In 2012, the 4 core values were established, as well as a framework master plan to guide the future development. With all of that framework set, Metro, on behalf of the 4 partners, embarked on a pretty robust 2-year planning process, which began in the winter of 2015. During that time, we held 5 large-scale community events. We had community conversations, facilitated interviews with stakeholders, focus groups. We met with PGE, state agencies, the 5 native sovereign nations. And through all of that effort, we heard many, many voices, and that in turn helped shape and guide the design of the Riverwalk. Now, the overall plan for the Riverwalk is very aspirational, and it's anticipated that it will be chunked out or built in phases as funding becomes available. So right now, we are focused on phase one. Goals for phase one include providing a prominent view of the falls, providing safe and secure access, habitat restoration, interpretation, and building demolition to help prepare the site for future phases. Now, a little bit about phase one. So phase one is the area that's going to be focused on the Mill H boiler plant complex. Some of the existing siding will be removed on that structure, and new guardrails or screens will be put up to enhance views and create safe access. Also, the removal of some concrete platforms or gangways will be help expose the basalt bedrock below and allow light and air into a restored riverbank. And also, prominent views of the falls will be located in multiple vantage points for phase one. But also, in addition to all of that, the one part that is critical is the site activation and how we can do that with balancing and thoughtful integration with programming and interpretation, and how those both feed in to the design. So we have a lofty vision, and we are excited to be on the cusp of beginning phase one. Metro, on behalf of the 4 partners, has hired OTAC to advance the conceptual design from into detailed permitting drawings and construction drawings, as well as managed construction. Also, we are days away from executing a contract with Lisa Crutcher Lewis, who will be our general contractor to help us advance the designs through the conceptual into construction. So we are on track to break ground for phase one in April of next year. Metro is excited to be working with Oregon City and the Trust and Biedermann to establish the site programming. We believe that this will help create a sense of shared excitement and belief with the thousands of Oregonians that we worked with to help craft and shape and mold the concept vision plan for the Willamette Falls. So I'm gonna now turn it over to Andrew. We have authorization from the partnership to do this work, and Willamette Falls Trust has the resources to execute that contract with Biedermann. So I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew to talk about the Willamette Falls Trust role in the project.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about a project that is near and dear to not just your hearts and not just our hearts, but to the hearts of many, many people in this city and in this region. So the Willamette Falls Trust.
You are.
Oh, thank you very much. And I am Andrew Mason, Executive Director for the Willamette Falls Trust.
Thank you.
For the record. So the Willamette Falls Trust is formerly Rediscover the Falls. The group, our role is to do fundraising and community engagement around the Riverwalk, and we're leading the philanthropic effort for the falls. Part of getting going on that was to talk to numbers of prospective donors so that we could leverage not just the Oregon City investment in the project, but to leverage the investment of the other public partners as well and see how far we could make that go. The return on investment so far appears to be very good, with the trust having taken in $7 million so far, and we're just getting revved up. And our mission here then is to champion a world-class Willamette Falls experience. So part of that is doing the design with the firms like Snøhetta, but then we're bringing in firms for the programming. What happens on day one? As a former educator, we know it's not just the building that makes things happen, but it's what's the teaching that happens in the building. So how do we activate the site? And that's what our presentation is here today. We have 2 firms that after doing a request for interest across the country that we're bringing on to help us with that. One of them is doing engagement engagement with the tribal voices with the 5 tribes and that is part of the Native American Advisory Board. And the second group is here today, Biedermann Redevelopment Ventures. And so they're going to talk a little bit about who they are and what they're up to, because we're very excited and I think very fortunate to have them working to help us, to have folks come on day one and think, wow, this is cool. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ashley Langworthy with Biedermann Redevelopment Ventures.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor. I'm Ashley Langworthy with Biedermann Redevelopment Ventures. So tonight, as Andrew mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about our role in the project, which is to program and activate starting with day one, and tell you a little bit more about ourselves so you can have an understanding of our firm. So just to give you a sense of where we're coming from, where our roots are, our work began out of our founder, Dan Biedermann, in Midtown Manhattan in the mid-'80s. He was in charge of redeveloping Bryant Park, and he still runs Bryant Park to today and is fairly well known for his strategies around activation and programming for public, and forming a nonprofit for that park. And with that first seed project, then he was asked by many cities around the country and towns and such to bring those strategies to other parks and public spaces around the country. And so today, we work in many different cities, and in some cases, we manage and run a public space over the long term, doing ongoing programming and activation and operations. And in other cases, we advise different governments, nonprofits, in some cases, private developers on how to do those techniques in other parks and public spaces around the country. So this slide gets at how we think about all of these pieces working together, from the programming and activation and the public space operations being really strong from day one, then work to create a brand and identity that then can feed into revenue generation on site and value creation, which then feeds back into program having additional self-sustaining revenues to feed back into making a great public space and a transformative public realm. So sometimes we're asked, why is programming on a site important? So here you can see several of our root reasons. So programming really helps to develop community and have people come together in a public space to share interests, share experiences, and to also gives a place for local traditions, talents, such to be shared in the public realm. Then again, in drawing together visitors and such, there's potential for economic development and revenue potential, simple as, food and beverage on site, but can have a spillover effect. And we also believe that it makes a park or a public space more safe and welcoming. With more people on site, more people feel, oh, I belong here as well, and this public space is welcoming to me. So here are some of our principles that we think about with programming. So we really believe it should be free and open to the public, that, in certain cases, there may be a one-off, a special concert or something that does have a ticket price. But in almost all cases, we believe the programming itself shouldn't be the revenue generator. Programming should be there to provide something for the public to bring people to the space. It should have the ability to change over time, so we will help determine and figure out, an appropriate opening season kind of programming calendar, but that it should have the ability to remain current and continue to stay fresh change with the times. We should also believe that it should, there may be certain times that we know, say with the Riverwalk, that it's going to be really busy in the summer months or such, but programming can help fill in those gaps. We know that it's also, there are questions around how people are going to get to the site, so the programming can even out that visitor curve so that there are people coming at different times of the week, different times of the day, different times of the year. Programming also should appeal to diverse audiences. So we spend a lot of time thinking about this. Who are the different people we want to attract, who we might be missing, what types of programs would, be a touch point for many different types of people. And then again, to showcase, in this case, in this project's very important, there's a lot of rich cultural, historical, ecological history and such that should be showcased on site.
Hang on, before you move,
Yeah,
can you go back?
sure.
What's going on in that upper right-hand picture?
Oh, the silent disco?
Right.
Never heard of it.
It's where, so the people put on headphones and they listen to music and dance, but there's no actual music out, and it's those with the headphones on.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So part of staying current, there's different
I'm
things
not.
that can,
It's really fun.
okay, see, we have a taker. So another thing we think about is having the right density, user density come to the site. So who are the different visitors, local, regional, say tourists from beyond who we might capture, and how many people are appropriate to be visiting this site? And again, where, are there gaps that need to be filled out that, maybe mid-February or in, evenings or whatever are going to be lower visitation. We want to make that a little bit more robust.
Are you looking at, from getting to that, you're looking at its capacity?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
because obviously, thinking about Disneyland, you can only hold so many people, and if you go over that, it's at the tipping point and it no longer becomes an enjoyable experience.
Exactly. I mean, to just speak for 1 second about that, what we're not looking to do, and this actually gets at it, is sometimes people can think of programming as, say, a really large special event, once a year, summer festival or something. While we do, and this pyramid gets at that, and the special events are at the skinny part of the pyramid, while we do think those can be important because they may get a new visitor, who hasn't heard of the site but lives an hour away, and they say, oh, this is something that really speaks to me, I'm gonna come, and then they discover it and they wanna return. But if we were only focusing on that, of course, we would create problems for ourselves in traffic jams and no place for people to park and such. So that's really not where we're focused. We're focused on, and this is more of a generic list on here, but the things that are more the daily or the core weekly kinds of programs that would get someone to come again and again, or every time their, grandma comes to visit or whatnot, then they always go to the site because there's something always happening. This is something I've spoken about, but really thinking about who are the different visitors that might come at different times of day, and again, seasonally and weekly and such, and smoothing out that curve of visitation and hitting different demographics. So in terms of our process, and this list is just a starter list. This is from combing through, we've been spending the last month and a half getting up to speed, combing through all the documents that have been, we have, but understanding what are the desires of the community. So this is just a starting point for us. And then we also then start to understand what are the programs and events that already occur in Oregon City, in the Willamette Valley, in the Portland metro area and beyond, to understand what is already successful, what are people already attending, liking, what could there be more of, what's missing. And then we also start to develop partnerships with local organizations and nonprofits. So this might be more at a regional scale, institutional partners, it might be very local. So to understand what are the different, organizations, institutions, nonprofits, businesses and the like that might contribute to programming on site. And a lot of the ideas actually come from those potential programs where we talk and there, is a fit of something that is appropriate to bring in on site. And then this just gets at the two programming objectives we're trying to achieve. So there's, of course, very important historical, cultural, ecological, and such interpretation that we want to incorporate to the programming. And then there's other things that are just great placemaking. So this might be making sure that there is food and beverage on site, or it could be anything as small as, a play structure for children or something that just makes it a really great place, or a place for dogs or whatnot. We'll get it, figure out what the specifics of that are, but just creating a great public space. And then I want to now just show you a little very quickly of our work in different cities, so you get a sense of what we're doing in other places. So this is Bryant Park that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, where we really have our roots. So it's a 6-acre park in Midtown Manhattan. And this is what it looked like in the late 70s, early 80s, before Dan Biederman worked to redevelop and establish the nonprofit that he runs through today. So here's Bryant Park today. It's a very successful, very well-visited, loved park. And it has incredible programming. So this next few slides just give you a sense of, here's some, the taiko drumming performances that occur. There's actually beekeeping on site, which people find astounding in Midtown Manhattan, but we're always looking for unusual, things that are really intriguing to people. Also bird watching that occurs there, which is also kind of a surprise to find in this dense part of New York. And then you can get a sense of, how many people might come to something like our summer film festival. And then really great basic bones of having good places to eat and drink, and nice places to sit, and movable furnishings and the like.
What
This is
happened to the fountain? Where's,
it's still there.
Okay,
Yeah.
you just didn't
Yep.
have any pictures of it.
Yeah, no, it's still there. This is a park that I manage in San Francisco. It's a public park, publicly government-owned, even though Salesforce has the naming rights, but it's a government-owned park, TJPA, Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority. It's a new transit station with a rooftop park, 5.4 acres. Downtown San Francisco. So we have 20 reoccurring regular programs every week. We also have 4 amenity areas that are open daily. So we have a art cart, a reading room, children's reading room, and a game cart. So here you see the game area. People can just borrow games, and there's, foosball and Giant Connect 4 and such, and these are very popular. We have a lot of free fitness. We have 9 free classes a week. People really enjoy coming to these. We have, as you wanted to know, the silent disco. So here's another shot of that. And you can see at the bottom the different, for these categories of, say, dance and theaters, are different partners that we program, are partners for the programs. And then we have 2 live music offerings a week at lunchtime and in the evenings. And then we have a variety of children's programming, which in this case, people are a little skeptical. This is in downtown San Francisco, and there are no kids in the neighborhood, but these have been immensely popular. And actually, for our upcoming season, we're adding, because we even had an event that 80 kids showed up. So there apparently is a need for this in the neighborhood. And then arts and culture, so this shows our weekly Learn to Knit class. We also have crafting nights and literary Litquake and the like. Here's a park that we worked on in Dallas. So this is not one that we work on in the long run, but we worked for about 6 or 7 years. It is a park that is a cap over this freeway. So kind of a large engineering feat. It was open in 2012. Here it is today. And so we developed all the programming. We also worked on all the operational concerns and the staffing and training and budgeting for that. And so kind of a wholesale picture of how to manage this park. So here is the reading room in Clyde Warren Park. And yarn bombing, which means people actually knit onto the tree. It's kind of a public art installation. Here's junior architects creating buildings, children's activities. Chess tournaments, And they have a really great water play area and playground in this park. So we also believe programming can be something that is, a weekly or program or such, but it can also be just something great that's on site that people can use or at any time. And finally, just going to finish up, show you one other project, Canal Side in Buffalo, 21 acres. This is also a riverfront site in the summer, a really great beach area with food and drink and sand and whatnot. Interpretive displays showing along the Erie Canal. And then in the winter, having a giant ice rink. And so hopefully that gives you a sense, a snapshot of the type of work we do. And we're really looking forward to this project. We're so excited, amazing site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
I
very
do
much.
want to recognize Mayor Alice Norris, who is the chair of the Willamette Falls Trust.
Thank you.
I would just make a comment. I loved your presentation. I know you've already left the seat, but I think we're all really excited. I'm super excited seeing that. It reminded me of my trip to Vietnam a few years ago, and I was shocked when I went to their park at 10 o'clock at night and at 10:30 and 11 p.m. and it was full of people and full of kids all doing activities like this. I was just in total amazement that it was 11 p.m. and it was full. So anyway, your pictures remind me of that, and that's exciting that we could have a site that would be active year-round and have a lot of public interaction and engagement. I think it's going to be great for our community. So thank you for your work.
Okay, moving on. Citizen comments. Mr. Gifford? Is that it, Claudia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, welcome back, and City Commissioners. My name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. Two things. One is, I wanted to start off with some kudos. Phil Lewis called me, and I really wanted to thank him. No,
There he is.
I had some serious questions about some of the issues about the proposed budget and granting and so on. And he spent a half an hour on the phone with me. Very gracious and very informative, and it was time well spent. And I want to thank him for that. I also want to invite the City Commission and anyone listening to next Tuesday's Oregon City Business Alliance Forum. The subject is workforce development. And I hope that that is a subject near and dear to all of your hearts as to how we can make sure that we have an educated workforce and how we are developing that. We have another panel discussion led by Bridget Daisy, Workforce Clackamas Director, and it should be a very interesting time. Once again, tonight is the last opportunity to sign up for that. You can go to ocbusinessalliance.com and go to the payments page and get a ticket for lunch. Should be another very informative. Last time she was there, it was one of our biggest forums ever. We had to blow the back wall out of the Abernathy to fill the place up. It's that hot of a topic as to how we're going to help the next generation of workforce. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Did you list the details, like what the time is?
11:30 to 1 at the Abernathy Center.
Okay. And you said next,
Tuesday. It's always on the fourth Tuesday of the month, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks, sir. Anybody else for citizen comment? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is everybody okay with the agenda?
Yes.
Then we will do,
We would like to pull item 8D off the consent agenda.
I can concur with that.
oh, okay. So 19-354, resolution number 19-20, declaring Oregon City's election to receive state revenues. Mr. Parno?
Thank you, Mayor Holliday and City Commissioners. Resolution number 19-20 declares Oregon City's election to receive state revenues, which is the state's sharing of liquor taxes. In order to be eligible to receive these monies, the City Commission is required to pass a resolution and hold 2 public hearings. The first public hearing was held on May 6th as part of the Budget Committee meeting. At that time, there were no comments. The second public hearing is to be held now. prior to the adoption of the budget. For the 2019 through 2021 biennium, about $820,000 is allocated of this funding for the city's general fund to support police, parks, and general government. So with that, I'd ask that you hold the public hearing. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to testify? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I would like to move that we adopt Resolution 1920, declaring Oregon City's election to receive state revenues.
Second. Moved by Commissioner McGriff, second by Commissioner Smith. Further discussion? Call a roll.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith. Aye. Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Moving on to 19-368, resolution number 19-24, adjusting the threshold amount for reimbursement district eligibility. Mr. Parno?
Mayor Holliday, I think, are we on resolution number 19-21, the next agenda item?
Oh, did I miss? Oh, I went too far, sorry. Now I am confused. All right, there we go.
60.
19-21, adopting the budget, making appropriations, imposing taxes, categorizing taxes for the 2019-2021 biennium. Mr. Parno.
Thank you, Your Honor, and City Commissioners. As you know, on May 6th, the Budget Committee met to review the 2019 through 2021 biennial budget and approved the proposed budget that the city manager put together with no changes. The budget includes a total amount of $248.3 million. That includes future reserves and so forth, so that's not all spending by any means. I do want to share that the budget includes 2 years at the current property tax rate of $4.409 per thousand. And it was back in 2007 that the city annexed into the fire district. And at that time, the city commission made a commitment to not raise taxes to the maximum level for 5 years. It's now been 12 years. For the last 12 years, we have maintained a tax rate that is 65 cents below the maximum level, which saves homeowners with an average assessed value of $300,000 about $195 a year. So compliments to you, commissioners, for maintaining that tax rate below the maximum level and saving the taxpayers some dollars. I also want to thank you for all of your support in the budget process and the budget committee, individual community members as well, and City Manager Conkle and all of the staff that participated in the budget and the finance staff really couldn't have put together a budget without their support. With that, I want to mention that the budget is presented tonight for adoption with no changes from what was approved by the Budget Committee in May. And I'd ask that you hold the public hearing and adopt Resolution 19-21. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I'll open the public hearing. Is there any public testimony?
Yes. 4.
Where? It's not on my screen. Oh, there we go. Okay. Commissioner Shaw and Spencer Rohde.
I have a question for Mr. Parno when we get there.
Good evening, folks. Brian Shaw, Oregon City, and tonight representing Oregon City Together. We're here tonight to request a budget amendment to allocate 10% of its marijuana tax dollars to prevent youth from using marijuana. The state and the county allocate marijuana dollars to prevention, and we are asking you to do the same thing. As you know, I was part of the commission decision to put lifting the ban on selling recreational marijuana within the city limits on the ballot for the voters to approve. In my opinion, this decision makes us accountable for dealing with the impact of recreational marijuana on our community's children and youth. You can say the voters are accountable because a majority voted to lift the ban also. But I think that is really letting ourselves off the hook, as it was the commission that voted to put it on the ballot in the first place. We appreciate that there's been some discussion about allocating some of these taxes to local nonprofits, and that you are discussing possible criteria for that. But the criteria should be about preventing youth marijuana use. We are asking you to connect marijuana taxes to youth marijuana prevention. For example, the majority of Oregon's tobacco taxes go to the Oregon Health Plan to fund health care and tobacco use prevention, which are connected to the impact of tobacco. Almost 20% of Oregon's liquor taxes go to mental health, alcoholism, and drug services. Again, these items can be connected to the impact of alcohol. Gas taxes go to roads and transit. We cannot wait until the next budget cycle to have revenue from those tax dollars so that we can start programming to the middle schools. Our youth are the city's future. Please do your part in helping all these kids be drug-free.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor Holliday. My name is Spencer Road, and I work for the Oregon City Police Department. I'm a police officer. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been assigned to the Oregon City School District as a school resource officer. And I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what me and Officer Plummer, who's the other school resource officer, what we do in the schools on a regular basis. So last year, or I should say this school year, this current school year that just ended, Officer Plummer and I wrote a total of 60 MIPs out of our schools, which is...
MIP?
I was gonna get there, which is a minor in possession.
Okay.
So that could be alcohol, that could be marijuana, or that could be tobacco. Of the 60, 51 were for marijuana. Anecdotally, I think one of the biggest things that Officer Plummer and I see in the schools when we have conversations with kids about where they're getting marijuana from, it's from older friends, older relatives. Now that it's been legal, another common source of the marijuana for the kids is their parents. I've investigated several cases where the parents have given marijuana to their children. I actually have one case down at the DA's office right now that's being reviewed. Another common thing that I hear from parents when they're talking to their children, whether it's in junior high or high school, about their children using marijuana, and a big argument that I hear from the kids is, it doesn't help me, or it doesn't hurt me, I should say. It helps my anxiety. It's natural. It comes from the earth. And so somewhere these kids are getting this information that it's not hurting them, and it's not affecting their brain in negative ways. And so I think this is, it's pretty indicative that the numbers have gone up in the last couple of years, and it's very, very concerning. I don't want to put Commissioner Smith on the spot, but I know he's seeing the problem in the high school firsthand, and it's pretty astounding. If Officer Plummer and I were not pulled away from to do other things at other schools and we just focused on this, we could double or triple that number of MIPs in our schools. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Pam Wilson and Mary Neely.
Good evening. I'm Pam Wilson with Oregon City Together. And I'm going to just provide a little data for you. Spencer had his personal stories. I'm just going to provide some data from a survey that we do every other year. And in 2014, and that's the year that Measure 19 went into effect, which is legalizing non-medical marijuana, 14% of our 11th graders told us that they had used marijuana in the last 30 days. So last year, we did the survey, our most recent one, 2018, 27% of the 11th graders said that they had used marijuana in the last 30 days. So since legalization, basically, their rate of use has almost basically doubled. And then in 2012, which was before legalization, 68% of the 11th graders thought using marijuana would harm them. And then last year, only 37% thought using marijuana would harm them. And as Spencer noted, we see the same alarming trend in the middle schools. Not the high numbers, but the same trends of perception of harm is down and use is up. And, and despite what some folks may think, marijuana does harm kids. Our brains don't develop until we're in our mid-20s. So, alcohol, other drugs, they're particularly vulnerable to the impact of alcohol and drugs. What might be fine for an adult brain can really hijack normal development of a teen brain. So what we're really kind of asking you tonight with this contract amendment, with this budget amendment, is to kind of make the connection between legal marijuana in our community with 7 dispensaries. We've got, a dispensary for every 5,000 residents. And the need to use marijuana tax dollars to prevent kids from using marijuana. We just think that connection makes a lot of sense. So we hope you'll consider this amendment and help us protect our kids in this really new era of legal marijuana. Thank you.
Mary
Thank you, Commissioner and Mayor. Both Commissioners Shaw and I testified at the goal-setting session, and I indicated that I supported a stronger nexus between those marijuana dollars coming in. We need a third police officer that's a school resource officer, and I'd like to see part of that effort being made through the income derived from the marijuana. I think some of the perceptions are coming in from kids that have seen their grandparents and so forth, knowing they smoked marijuana and so forth during the hippie era. The fact of the thing is that we don't know the long-term impacts of current marijuana. The THC levels are 2.5 times what they were at that time. So there may be longer-term effects than just the youth smoking them. And I think we need to hasten this education effort, but I think it's important that we have the police resource officer strength that we require. They're the ones that are really seeing what's going on, and they're the ones that interact with the parents more than anybody else. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Pam, is Oregon City Together the only group in this area that is doing this type of work? Or, I mean, in what area do you
Directly.
cover?
Well, we have
Oregon City
a,
School District or?
yeah, the school district's our fiscal agent.
Okay.
So we're a drug-free community grant. We have a federal grant, but police, the school district, parents, teens, they're all part of the coalition. And our only purpose, we did a community assessment, 2016, which told us that marijuana and alcohol were the worst problems. So that's what we concentrate on. But yeah, we're kind of the group to kind of focus on that.
I think in terms of, just to comment on what Doug said, that while maybe the studies aren't indicating definitively what effect the effect it does have on teenagers and young people, they still don't know what effect it has on adults. And there's been some interesting reports in the New York Times that talk about problems.
Yeah, it's a new era, and it's good that we're doing research, really, learning more about it.
Commissioner Smith?
So I think one of the questions that we need to have answered publicly is why this conversation has kind of been separated from the budget discussion, or at least in what we've talked about in our past meetings. I think that's the first thing. But I'll also, I would like to see, I mean, I definitely have seen this at school, especially its effect that it's had on students being more comfortable with vaping, et cetera. I've never seen anything like it. And I've talked with the school resource officers numerous times over the last year about it. I would like to see us, have some sort of a work session to talk about it with representatives from the school district, OC Together, the police officers, because I think, one topic is how much money do we dedicate to this topic or to education, but also then how are we going to do it? I think there's some ways within the school. I mean, Officer Rowe talked about how many MIPs they wrote. I imagine that's a lot less than what they could have wrote, because they're not citing kids all the time on everything. And is there a way for us to have a diversion program to some degree where students go through a class or something if on their first offense or whatever that can kind of direct that. And I think that's something that we could have a discussion with, and that might even be something that is similar to attendance court that we've dealt with. I don't know, but I think there could be a large discussion about that. I guess this is one of the topics on our list of topics that I think needs to go to the top. And one of the reasons I think so is we need to have at least something in place, even at a minimal state before the school year starts again.
Yeah.
Or at least have that as a mark to initiate something. So I hope that we could do that.
I love that idea because it really is a community conversation. I mean, I think we all have ownership in the solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm uncomfortable making a budget amendment at this stage of the game when, I don't know if staff has had any conversations with this group. I don't know what the organization looks like, what the, you know.
What's the plan? What's the
What's the plan with, so I think rather than make an amendment to the budget tonight, we need to have a work session probably in July. And like Commissioner Smith said, bring everybody together in the same room and let's have a discussion about, you know, what that looks like, you know, all those sorts of things. Is that an unreasonable way to go about this, Mr. Conkle? I sense you have something to say, so.
No, I think I was just going to confirm what Commissioner Smith had said. We were asked to look at two things that are on the work session list. One was marijuana revenues and have a work session about that. And then the second was to come up with the criteria for how we were going to address requests from nonprofits.
Right.
So those were on that have been identified. We put that out after the last work session for the commissioners to kind of rank from the full list of what we've identified at the time we sent that out of the priorities. I guess I'd have to think a little bit about the July of just putting it to.
I was just throwing something out there,
Right.
so bring it back to us in an expedient manner. Okay?
My question for Mr. Parno is that in a simplified form, what is the process for a budget amendment?
Thank you, Mayor Holliday and Commissioner McGriff. So in a simplified form, a budget amendment can be made throughout the biennial budget process with certain criteria established in budget law regarding publication and so forth, depending upon the dollar amounts. And I don't think that these dollar amounts exceed things that wouldn't allow the commission
That's
to make.
10%
Yeah, so.
threshold, right?
So I want to answer that question directly in terms of a budget amendment. In order to support the commission, there's a couple of information points I could offer. First, I want to thank former Mayor Neely and Commissioner Shaw and their police officer and the great folks that are here. My wife is a school teacher, and the school district helped me to raise 3 daughters. They're amazing young women right now, so I can't think of a better service that you provide. It's just amazing, and so I'm very supportive of that in general. Do want to kind of talk about process a little bit. So the city commission is able to make adjustments to the budget up to 10% within a fund. And this would qualify for that. The other thing is that I did mention earlier that we put together this budget, meeting all the commission goals, meeting our criteria for our minimum standards for our bond ratings and so forth, without increasing the tax rate. I know everybody's happy with that. So I really appreciate what Commissioner Smith mentioned, is that maybe having a discussion a little bit later on would help us to be able to think through some of that process, because this is new information for us, so.
But to also clarify for the public, I think part of that was the money's not sitting there, right? I mean, so part of why we haven't been able to say this amount of money is going to that is because it's not there.
It's already allocated.
Right, and so that was part of it too.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. My boss is sitting here, and he was very gracious in saying there were 2 points, and, but I think you clarified one of them. They were kind of married in the fact that we received clear direction from the commission that you expect it will come back with some criteria, what's the level of funding, that we could make some donations so that everybody has a fair shake with that. The other thing that I recall very clearly that City Manager Conkle had mentioned, the commissioner understood, was the marijuana monies have been dedicated to the homeless liaison officer and our police department. We are in the process of working through contract negotiations with police. So we have a balanced budget. So you're right there. I'm challenged with that a little bit. I had some of the commissioners weren't on the board, but I was asked to give a presentation on the marijuana funding allocations. I could probably come up with that date, but it was probably 6 months ago. And at that time, kind of went through the allocation of marijuana funding. The state resources, much of which was dedicated already to youth funding and mental health resources. The county gets a portion. the city's allocations generally considered for law enforcement support. Whether that's the best use or not, I wouldn't make a claim to that, but I do know that I appreciate the support to be able to have a second to kind of look at it because I think we came in with the best resources we can, allocated thoughtfully, and those monies are spent, is your point. So, but I know we're all supportive of that process. So a little more time to look at it makes sense to me as well.
And I think just to second what you were saying is that there is a different, whereas alcohol sale money, marijuana money goes into the general fund.
Right.
So versus a system development charge or the hotel tax, which has kind of sideboards around it, right? Whether it's related to tourism or whatnot. But we did allocate some of those funds when we brought on the extra officers. I forget how many budget cycles ago that was, for Officer Day. Last budget cycle.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing. Does the commission have any further discussion?
About budget, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I will just state that due to my comments at the actual budget meeting, and at the separate urban renewal meeting budget, I will be most likely abstaining. I do not want to support, the budget because of the urban renewal connection to the budget, but fully support the, entire budget separate from that piece. And so therefore won't vote yes or no.
Okay, is there a motion?
I just want to ask, should we do, Tony, if you could help me with this, so should we do a motion that adopts the budget and also included that same motion, or should it be a separate motion to have this
Probably
secondary discussion? Should that be two motions or one motion together?
Well, hold on, the secondary discussion has already been settled, so we're just doing a motion on the resolution.
I was asking the city manager, if you don't mind.
I do mind, I'm the mayor, and I'm running the meeting, and I'm getting a little tired of you trying to do that job. So is there a motion on the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 19-21, adopting the budget, making the appropriations, imposing taxes, and categorizing taxes for the 19-21 biennium.
I'll second it.
Further discussion? Call a roll.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle-Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
abstain.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Moving on, PC 19-061, first reading of ordinance number 18-1009, Development Code Amendments, including equitable housing, planning file LEG 18-00001. Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. I am honored to sit here tonight and to request first reading of our code amendments that we've been working on. This package includes a variety of changes which remove a bunch of red tape, but it also empower our community members to have additional housing types so we can stay within the communities that we love. Tonight's meeting includes just deliberation from the commission. The record is closed, testimony is closed, so it's really just up to the commission to make a decision on this one. As you know, our schedule moving forward, we have, if you decide to move forward with the first reading tonight, we would have a second reading on July 3rd. Also at July 3rd, we'll deal with some of these outstanding issues. If you think of our code amendments as a pie, there's a slice or a couple slices we held back that we're gonna work on. Those issues that we're gonna work on include height limits in our mixed use downtown, which is the flat part of the city for the most part. Shelters and the regulations regarding shelters, as well as short-term rentals. And then we also wanted to acknowledge that we're doing a lot of code amendments. Who knows if there is an error or not, but we want to leave ourselves some space to work on it for a couple months and then make any changes should we need to. So the motion that's requested of you is to approve the code amendments that are before you, and then do a continuance for those three outstanding items: mixed use downtown, short-term rentals, shelters, actually four. Also the code cleanup if there's any issues that we see. And that's all I have. I'm here to answer any questions.
I'm ready to move on.
I'm ready to move to approve this motion as is shown on our screen. I can read it verbatim.
I'll second it.
We do have a speaker as well.
Okay, so one, we haven't done the public hearing yet, so we can't have a motion.
The
It's closed.
public hearing is closed.
Well, it's still listed under public hearings in my
You could reopen it, I believe it said.
chart here, so.
You can reopen it if you want to.
The only thing I had to say was that if we're to look at the MUD later on, the mixed-use downtown, then I can hold off on what I was talking with you about until that discussion.
Yes, so the items are specifically height limits in mixed-use downtown, but if you want to add on a fourth item, which is if we should allow,
I'd like to add food carts in the MUD outside of the, what is it, historic downtown or?
Downtown Design District. Yes, so I was anticipating you saying that. So in the code amendments before you, we will allow transitory food carts in the mixed-use downtown outside of our downtown design district. And you are asking about,
I wouldn't want it to be permitted outright, I would want it to be a conditional use.
yes. So if the commission wants, we could add that to our list of other stuff that we'll be looking at outside of this.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. Then with that, are there any further discussions?
I just want to make one comment for Ms. Turway. In your document that's part of this packet, the legislative file, 18-00001, and you go through a summary of essentially how the code amendments comply with the comprehensive plan. You know which document I'm talking
Yes.
about. In there, and this is just for clarity's sake, there is a table, a matrix on page 6 that kind of shows all of the areas where we were proposing new uses based on zoning types and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
I just for the record, we pulled out everything about shelters, and this matrix still shows shelters for up to 10 beds and shelters greater than 10 beds as a conditional use in a set of the medium and high density zones plus mixed use commercial and mixed use development districts. And so is that just an error? It didn't get removed from this
That is an
table?
error. I assume we can just strike those from the findings.
It's not there, it's not in the red line version. I've gone through this and I know that we've removed all the shelter stuff from the actual code. I just want to be clear. This was the only place that I saw a discrepancy. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yes.
Okay.
So the document you're referring to is our findings for this that support compliance with our approval criteria, and it sounds like we can strike those. My apologies for that.
I just assumed that this was in here probably because it looked like it was needed, a needed document to address all of our code with the comp plan. And so I just want to make sure that everything was in alignment.
Yeah, and obviously we want the findings to reflect what's actually adopted, and, there's just a lot of moving parts in this.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got,
Yep.
looked over, and so we.
No complaint, I just,
Yeah.
I just would just kind of happen to see it and I was like, I think those should be removed from this table.
Good eye, this is a group exercise.
Yeah,
That could
yeah,
come back to bite us, right? At some point.
yeah.
Conflict with itself. Yep.
Rachel, I appreciate you bringing that up. I asked the question earlier in the week and Christina answered
Oh,
the question
okay.
for me, so I knew it was not supposed to be in there.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table.
Do we
Is there
need
further
to-
discussion?
Do we need to amend it to add the discussion?
As it's written, which is what Commissioner O'Donnell moved, did not include the discussion of food carts. And so if that's something you want
But
to add
the
in.
discussion of food carts is going to come up after we pass this, we're going to continue to have discussion on those 3 items, right?
Yeah, so if you want to read this motion, there's the list of building heights and MUD, short-term rentals, shelters, and any needed corrections and clarifications you would just want to add to that.
Food carts in the MUD?
Yeah.
Mobile food carts.
Is that a friendly amendment?
I will amend that motion to reflect that statement, the addition of food carts in the MUD.
And Commissioner McGriff, as a seconder, do you accept that amendment
Yes,
as
I
well?
accept it.
Okay, is there further discussion on the motion? Call a roll, please.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Moving on, 19-348, Resolution 1919, adopting findings in support of alternative contracting method for the renovation of the Oregon City Public Works Operations Complex. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So, we're pretty excited about this decision tonight. It's one of many that are coming before you. On June 5th, you made the decision to hire a owner's representative. That owner's representative has been very busy working on, right now we've got out on the street a request for proposals from architects to serve the project. We expect to have an architect selected by August 19th, and on board working, and then assuming this decision moves forward, we'll have another RFP out for construction manager, general contractor services. And the plan is to get through a short list and actually have interviews that would include the architect to help with those interviews on the 21st of August. So we're moving under a pretty tight timeline. That timeline, in theory, would have design and permitting pretty much through completion at in July of 2020, and construction from that point forward through September 2021. So we're hoping by Christmas of 2021, we will be in the Public Works building. So there's a quick little update. So the staff report that was included on this item talked a little bit about a traditional design bid build. And I know you're familiar with the process that we're recommending. We've done it for the library and we're doing it for the police station. That's another building that we're doing that. I can talk through the details of that if you want to hear that. Otherwise, I'm just looking for an affirmative decision.
Is there a motion?
I'll move. So move.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner McGriff, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
And Mayor Dan Holliday.
Aye. Is
Thank
there
you.
any general business?
No, there's not.
Commissioner Lyle Smith asked to pull item 8D from the consent agenda. Resolution 1918, revocable permanent obstruction in the right-of-way at 413 4th Avenue. Mr. Lewis?
So, thank you, Commissioner Lyle Smith, for giving me a little bit of a heads up on this. I do appreciate that.
30 seconds.
So the specific to this item, and if we need to go into other items, we sure can do that. I know you'll help me get there. But specific to this item, it's a single-family home in the Kenema neighborhood at 413 4th Avenue. This property is on a slope. There's some drawings in here. I don't have a slide presentation because I'm not nearly as good as Laura Turway in just developing one on the fly. But basically, this property is on the downhill side of 4th Avenue. It's a relatively steep slope, geologic hazard area. And so in order just to transition from the kind of edge of pavement to the actual parcel in Kenema, they've got wide right-of-ways, but narrow streets. So lots of times off the edge of the pavement, there's quite a bit of space between the edge of the pavement and the property line, and that's what happens in this case. And because it's on such a steep lot, there's a fair amount of transition that needs to happen just to get a driveway, for instance, or access to that building. So this encroachment, by the way, encroachment permits went, I would say, within the last couple of years, we've been pretty good about getting anything that we find that's new construction in an encroachment permit and bring that before the city commission. So in the code, an encroachment permit like this, or a revocable permit obstruction in the right-of-way, we bring before the city commission. That's the way the code requires it. We now have an adopted fee schedule for that process to happen. So a property owner can come in and apply for that, that access to the right-of-way. We will review that and make a staff report either recommending or not recommending. Typically, if we don't recommend it, we share that with the applicant, and they may withdraw their application, or if they want to move forward with it, either with our blessing or without our blessing, that can come before you and you can make a decision based on that. In this case, we're recommending it, and we look at things like, we definitely look at the geologic hazard. That's our main realm that Public Works dabbles in is, is the whatever's in there fit within a geologic hazard criteria. Through the land use process, they have to go through the geologic hazard code, so we require that. And so in this case, we've done that. We also look for other concerns, right? If there was a transportation system plan project that called for widening 4th Avenue, let's say, or a pathway on off the edge of the pavement, we would look for that as well, those kind of things. If there was utilities that was impacted by these facilities, we'd comment on that. In this case, none of those really apply. So we've got this developer is proposing some stepped walls, and I would say between Laura and I, we've been dealing with more and more of these kind of scenarios, especially in Kenema with the development that's happened over the last couple of years with properties. So Public Works looks at it from a geologic hazard perspective. Building department typically looks at the walls from a structural perspective. And those walls that are in the public right-of-way are always kind of a bit of a challenge for us to talk through and figure out how to get there in terms of approval. But in this case, I think, and I haven't really checked with Laura on this, but I'm pretty confident my staff and her staff have talked about this facility in particular. So that's this site.
So the reason I pulled this is partly because of a process question. We've had members of the public who are concerned about various retaining walls and stuff that is being built in a historic district. And so Mr. Lewis is providing this report from a Public Works geotech standpoint, but from a land use and planning standpoint, so there's nothing in here about that piece of it. And what I'm trying to figure out is there's no reassurance in here that any of this proposed stuff actually meets any of our other code criteria regarding retaining wall heights and placement in a historic district. I'm wondering, where does that review, where and when is that review happening in the process?
So this project went through the planning commission, or not planning commission?
No, it did not go, it went through our historic review board.
So it went through the historic review board. They had several meetings about this process. And then there is the normal process of as buildings go up, inspections take place, and all that sort of thing. So I'm confused about where the questioning is coming from.
Because there's nothing in here that tells me that this has been before the historic review board. There's nothing in here that tells me that the historic review board approved these design site plans. And at the same time, if we agree to this a permit, who is going to circle back and make sure that those retaining walls actually meet the code requirements so that 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we don't have members of Kenema voicing concerns about something that was built that didn't match standard or that we didn't follow and actually didn't do our due diligence on process.
Mr. Conco, you want to answer that?
I'll let Laura, start, and then I can, if she misses anything,
And I'll join with Commissioner Lyles Smith. I'm of the same opinion that she is, so I'd like clarification.
I just want to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is.
No.
It's a great question, and it's one we've probably struggled with over the years, but now everybody has to sign off on permits before they're issued, and everybody is planning, building, and engineering. So all three of us all have to sign off on permits, and we make sure that our department is settled. This has gone through a series of reviews through different departments and through different agencies. because Historic Review Board is a different process than the geologic hazards process was, which is different than this process. And Kenema, there's just a lot of stuff to go through.
Was this not also appealed to LUBA?
I do not believe this was
Oh, okay.
appealed to LUBA, no. But one thing that I could say is that I am really appreciative of the commission's investment into our new permitting system, Intergov, and I know you guys recently talked about that, but that forces us to physically sign something in the computer before permits can be issued. And so it's an extra layer to double check to make sure that we are working with each other. I would say within our reports, we have the same people sort of assigned to the project that work on different aspects of it. So they also can connect that dots there. And then our staff reports for like geologic hazards will reference back to the Historic Review Board review. So the plus side is we have pretty small departments, and so we kind of communicate well, and we have the same people on different projects related to the same properties. And so that's worked out well. But I'd say in recent years, we've done a really good job about connecting with each other, and then also making sure that all those I's are dotted for our own department before we sign off on things.
So it's not just the permits to start the project, but there are also ongoing inspections to make sure that the contractor is building what he's turned in the plans, right?
That's correct. And sometimes they don't, and that requires us to go out on site and take a look at it. And when we do, we generally grab the other departments to go with us just to make sure nobody else has a problem, and we stop work for that issue and make sure it's addressed correctly.
May I ask a question? I really would like to see an amended report. I'm not comfortable with voting on this particular item right now because I had a whole list of questions as well. I didn't get a chance to talk to you ahead of time, but I said something is missing here, and I am uncomfortable with the way the report is now because all the information isn't in there, and I want to see that because I also don't want to come back and have to deal with what we're dealing with right now with Fourth and Ganong, which I hope has been resolved.
So it's my report. We have typically not included that information in encroachment permits. What I'm hearing from you is you'd like to have more of that in the Kenema neighborhood in particular. So
Well,
we can amend the report.
If there's other information that we need to know, that there's multiple reviews, because again, I agree with you, there was nothing in here to tell me that this, because one of my questions was, what is the actual physical improvement that's going to be in the right of way? Then I see this little design here for a picket fence. Where's that going? I don't know. And I went out there, but you can't quite see it on the ground because it's not really marked out or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm just,
Part of that is using just using the information that's submitted with the application and reviewing that, not looking at the fence, for instance, the picket fence, because that's a different
right,
scenario.
but it showed up on the detail, so I'm looking at
Right,
it,
Right. So our focus was pretty specific on encroachment in the right-of-way. Obviously, we looked at the walls as well and how they're stepped to make sure they're, within that geologic hazard area. But we can add more.
Yeah,
And
I
we
think
can do that in
more is better.
in the future. I just didn't recognize that need.
Yeah, the only thing I would caution the commission is that we have all these different processes, and sometimes the timing doesn't work out, and sometimes we're working on them at the same time. So I would hesitate for John to include information on Historic Review Board if Historic Review Board hasn't made their decision yet or is midway through making their decision or something like that. So there is a little bit of
But maybe there's a
some
way in the
thought.
report to say, this needs to go
Yeah.
to the board, so that you indicate that it's a multiple departmental review. Because again, I just saw this, I said, okay, there's something missing here, that it's gotta be more than just engineering.
So just an acknowledgement of the other processes, not necessarily.
Yeah, and I'm uncomfortable approving something before another board has to approve something. I mean, are we,
They're all conditioned on each other, so the timing is up to the
I
applicant.
understand that, but that's still trying to get everything all lined up.
Yeah, I also have visited the site and read the reports. I had the same concerns as you, and I'll join with you in that.
Okay, so let's bring this back.
Do we have to make a motion?
I'm
to
assuming,
table it?
No, not on the consent
Okay.
calendar.
Well, I'm not going to assume. I don't know where the Historic Review Board approval is, but we'll bring it back at the appropriate time based on what I'm hearing tonight. And I'm hoping that'll be next meeting, but I don't know that.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Mr. Edgar, do you have anything that hasn't been written to us in rather several lengthy emails?
Yes, I do, sir.
Then make it quick, please.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday and Commissioners. I'm Paul Edgar from Oregon City, a member of the Friends of Kenema. Just as a critical point, this lot, and I've talked to the owner of the lot, the contractor who's building the house extensively, very nice person. The lot's on a 35% grade, and it has a history of slow-moving land. In fact, the land here and the amount of sloughing that's occurred, a house directly below it on 3rd Avenue had dirt 5 feet high against its back wall of the house that has been sloughing down from this property. And when you walk the property, it's like waves, and I have walked it. So it shows this movement. I've talked to Dr. Scott Burns from PSU. And this property, this section along.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So what does this conversation have to do with
Why this is important is because that's pertinent to this whole section of property right from the edge of the pavement up there into the public right-of-way is in an area that's moving, that's actively moving. And so it is moving greater than South End Road. Okay, and we have FEMA money going to South End Road. This is a very dangerous, Nogami has it listed as highest susceptibility for landslides. So all I'm saying out of this is that it's very active. There is no landslide insurance, period. So if somebody does something, if it goes, who's held responsible? And the person below, that lives below, they can be wiped out, people can be killed, and there is no who pays, what happens? It just, that's the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. So you guys will get together and bring this back at the appropriate time. Then is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Lyle Smith. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGurk.
Aye. I just checked the box and
Mayor
said it out
Dan
loud.
Holliday.
Okay, Mr. Conkle, you have anything for us?
Two things. First, Chief Band.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Two things real quick. One, you asked questions about Malala and Pearl and some of the stuff that's happened there recently. And I just wanted to report that today we did a sting there between 9 a.m. and 11. Made 14 stops, issued 20 citations. Wow. Captain Davis about got hit twice.
How do you issue more citations than stops?
Some people have more than one problem.
More than one problem per person.
Only 3 problems per person allowed.
Yeah, actually, Captain Davis was one of the guinea pigs on the plainclothes on the street.
On the crosswalk?
Yeah.
Ooh.
9 motorists were cited for cell phones, 3 were cited, and 1 was issued a warning for basically not stopping at the stop sign. 2 were cited for not stopping for pedestrians. 1 was arrested for driving revoked and having methamphetamine. But we're going to be doing more of these, and up and down Malala Avenue, and it's been. It's a learning process too, especially having Sean out there almost getting hit. We're just seeing more things. I just wanted you to know you'd heard about these things that have happened, and we're in ongoing communication with John, giving them feedback about what we can do about this crosswalk and other ones on Malala Avenue. So it's a continuing conversation that's going to be happening. And then the other thing is just a reminder about tomorrow, our project kickoff and then the open house at the school. That's going to be starting at 7 o'clock. The weather looks like it's going to be good. It's not going to be hot, looks to be just cloudy. 7 o'clock to, I'm hoping we're done with the kickoff at 7:30. That's going to be behind the school. And then as soon as we're done with that, we're going to have the back doors open so people can walk directly into the school. And you'll notice a construction fence went up around that site
Where do
today.
you want us to park?
Well, I'm imagining we're going to fill the parking lot quick. But I think what we're going to do is probably start funneling some people actually in and parking. We'll have some people kind of directing traffic to help people park, but it's going to get full. The church across the street, you can park there as well, across Lynn.
So I did put out to the family of the descendants of George Hamlin that we were doing that and welcome them to come to the thing.
Great, that's great. Thank you.
Mayor, can I just add on to what Jim said? Because I know that Pearl is a questionable thing. There was an interview that, there were some quotes about what we were going to be doing about that intersection. And so we did meet with the county on that intersection. One of the outcomes of that was a recommendation that we hire a third-party traffic consultant to review that intersection before we make any changes there. They determined that while there's these kinds of problems with distracted drivers and other violations through that intersection, there's nothing really wrong with the signage or the striping or the sight distance or the signal itself. So, while we think there's things that can be done there, their recommendation, based on their experience with accidents at signalized intersections, was to hire a third-party consultant. So we're moving forward with that.
Okay.
And last update that I have is I've been working with the Human Resources Department. We went and pulled comparables for the Economic Development Manager position that we have of surrounding jurisdictions of comparable size. And what we found was that where we have our Economic Development Manager positioned in the salary scale was towards the very low end of what we saw as an average in the region. So I've authorized the HR department to go to the next step up for that salary range for that position, which would put us almost at the exact midpoint of what we see as an average throughout the region for the salary range for that. And then we're going to be immediately putting that out for recruitment again, similar to how we did last time. I believe we hit 7 or 8 different organizations, websites and whatnot, both general and specific to economic development. So we'll get that moving and get that filled as quickly as we can.
Okay, on communications, Commissioner Lyle Smith, you have anything for us?
Not tonight.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I guess the only thing I'd say is I'm enjoying the interaction between commission and staff. I know that each of us on commission speaks with staff members on specific issues, and we exchange information and direction, and it's a good working relationship, so let's continue it.
Commissioner Smith?
Nothing.
Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, I have one thing. I just wanted to thank the staff and the commission. Being on here for 2 months, I'm still in the learning process, and I appreciate everybody answering my questions and being patient with me, because even though I know things, there's things I don't know. So with that regard, and I also realize that my fellow commissioners, that we all have expertise, and there's things that we know and we don't know. But I do want to point out, Dan, please don't ever speak to me like that again. I don't appreciate that. I was asking the city manager a question. I'm not calling you out.
Nor do I appreciate you
Listen.
interrupting me and trying to run the meeting.
I wasn't interrupting you or running the meeting.
I think we can have that discussion
So
offline.
I just want to say that because
I
it's
agree.
inappropriate.
So I did want to say, as far as the chief's stings are concerned, that they're required to let the public know beforehand. Is that right? You put it out on social media or something beforehand?
Not required. I think they do something.
When we're doing it, because of a grant, there's grant requirements that do that.
Yeah, right, okay.
But we're not,
This was an internal thing.
we're doing this
today.
out of our own, just as in response to this
All right.
stuff.
I asked the police chief, based on what we've seen on Malala, to, realizing that we had certain limitations, and if we can get more grant funding, we'll certainly get it and use that. But
Sure.
Until we kind of get this under control a little bit more, it is a priority to everyone's had cell phones for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing new that you don't drive with a cell phone in your hand.
So the only thing I have is, I was notified by Eric Underwood, who is our representative at PGE, or PGE's representative to us, I guess, that the Westland side of the paper mills are at least theoretically going to reopen sometime in the near future. So PGE has reached an agreement with a working group of folks, and I don't know who that is, but PGE is reaching out to all the partners to let them know that that's what's going on the Westland side. So if you see lights on and people working over there, that's because they're maybe going to be restart something. Commissioner Smith, you would want to say?
Yeah, sorry, I would just want to remind people that it's Heritage Days this weekend, Oregon City Heritage Days, Friday, Saturday. 10 to 4, I thought it was 10 to 5.
10 to 5, that's what I said.
All the museums will be open, the cemetery and the elevator.
And don't forget to say
And it's free.
It's free.
Okay. And I will be out of state from Thursday until the following Tuesday in Honolulu for the U.S. Conference of Mayors.
Oh, darn, that's horrible.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry.
Anything else we can do? And we're adjourned.